Welcome to the Delicious Dungeon, where our motto is, if you can beat it, you can eat it. So today we're reviewing the manga Delicious in Dungeon, otherwise known as Dungeon Meshi, or just simply Delicious Dungeon. This manga series was actually recommended to me a while ago, and I did read a little bit of it when it was recommended to me, but only recently did I really start to dig my teeth into it, like to actually get pretty far in the manga series. And I gotta say, I have been enjoying myself. So this is a bit of an older fantasy manga. Features the classic fantasy party, which we see a little bit less of these days. It's a lot less focused on video gamey mechanics in like fantasy video games, and more focused on more so dungeon crawler type stuff. More D&D centric type rules. The story features an adventuring party who is battling a dragon in the dungeon, and the dragon kind of gets the better of them. One of their party members sacrifices themselves in order to teleport the rest of the party up to the surface and save their lives. The one who sacrificed themselves also happens to be the knight's sister, and due to the fact that, of course, the knight is very attached to his sister, and the other party members very much want to go back and save her if they can, they decide to go back into the dungeon, find whatever remains of her body, and hopefully bring her back to life, which is a thing in the universe that you can, if the body is still intact, you can revive them, which is also a thing in Dungeons and Dragons. So, like I said before, they're kind of playing off of those types of mechanics. The only thing is, of course, how are they going to survive in the dungeon for that long? They don't have any money, they don't have any food or supplies. And that's when the knight gets the daring idea, well, we'll just eat whatever monsters we kill down there and make it into food. And this guy doesn't really know how to cook, but they happen upon a dwarf who is a cook himself and has actual experience with eating monsters in the dungeon. So they get him to join the party, and then they go into the dungeon, and yes, they eat what they kill. And that's kind of the hook of the series, hence the name Delicious Dungeon. As far as the genre, I would definitely classify this as maybe an action comedy. It starts off leaning a little bit more towards the comedy aspect of it, and then as it goes on becomes a little bit more serious. How they fight the monsters is genuinely pretty good. It's similar to how D&D is meant to be played. They're trying to use their heads and figure out how they can use their own individual skills to come together as a team to defeat the monster, and it's pretty satisfying to watch. It's how a classic fantasy party should function, of course, something that I've seen less of in modern comics. And then you have the additional parts added in where they're trying to figure out how to cook said monster afterwards, and sometimes that's a problem solver in of itself. Another humorous part is part of making a comic in general, or making any story, is you do a little bit of research to kind of better understand what you're writing about. It looks like the mangaka, in this instance, actually did some research on some recipes, because a lot of these recipes are actually like kind of real recipes, just with substitutions in them. You know, obviously the meat substituted for whatever monster that they killed, regular mushrooms substituted for whatever magical mushrooms they've collected, etc., etc. But it is genuinely entertaining, and I do find all of the party members to be pretty likable, having their own places of expertise where they shine, their own personalities that distinguish them from one another. And it's good in general just to see like a working team doing their best to achieve their goals, and you genuinely believe that they can do it because you see them, you know, work together, use their heads, and succeed in all of these challenges that they face. It starts off a little bit more of a lighthearted comedy, gets more serious down the line. There's, you know, more plot to be had down the line for when they actually do rescue and revive their party member, of course, and I won't get too much into spoilery territory there. You should honestly just read it yourself. I will say I'm not completely caught up on this manga series myself either. I'm only about like 40 chapters in. It's the type of manga series I could see going on for a really long time because it seems like you could just, you know, keep adding new monsters for them to kill, keep adding new enemies for them to fight. There's a pretty big, expansive world that they've created, you might as well. And you can tell, definitely, for sure, that the mangaka had a lot of love of fantasy when they were putting this series together, because they include a lot of different creatures, and along with some, like, new creatures that they came up with on their own, and the art is genuinely quite beautiful in some sections. Characters are very expressive. The only thing that I would say might turn readers off is maybe if they're not familiar with these dungeon crawler type of genres, because it's a little bit different from just a straight fantasy to do like specifically D&D type stuff. And I do think if you're more familiar with that, if you've played D&D, for example, then you'll be able to appreciate the series a lot more. Not that you'll be completely unable to read it if you're not familiar with D&D, but it did add to my experience in reading it. It did add to the comedy parts of it. Obviously, they're taking some of their own interpretations of certain monsters and how certain things work, but for the most part, you can tell that the majority of their inspiration is coming from dungeon crawler stuff and role-playing games like D&D. And so long as I got here for the review, I did hear some good news recently that they would be actually making an anime of this manga series, which is pretty exciting. It got picked up by Studio Trigger. That was announced last year. I don't know when a release date is necessarily going to come for that, but I will definitely be watching that anime when it comes out. So if you're into fantasy or dungeon crawler type things, if you want to see that classic adventuring party that is not an isekai and does not use video game mechanics, you better pick up Delicious Dungeon, because this is definitely something that you want to be reading. Also, you might want to be reading Horizon Quest, which is not out quite yet, but you can join the mailing list for when we launch on April 6th. Check the dates on your phone, because chances are if you're watching this video late, it might already have passed. Oh no. Did you miss the campaign? This is our own independent fantasy comic that we're working on. I'm working on the art myself, actually, and I've got fantasy writer Adam Meisner doing the story and writing, and it's been quite exciting to piece this comic together and get it ready for people to read. I do hope that you'll check it out, see if it's your thing. Let me know if there's any other fantasy manga or comics you'd like me to check out as well. Leave a list down below in the comments section. Like the video if you haven't already, of course. Subscribe if you would like to see more videos, more reviews from me. Join the fan club if you'd like to see some sneak peeks of some comics that I'm working on. Go to burningstarcomics.net if you'd like to read some comics that I've worked on in the past right now. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!
Program restart.